Welcome once again to the We Like Sportz Podcast. At this time, it's at Ed in Columbus on Twitter. If you don't follow him, he could throw his hands up in a sign, and you could end up following him that way as well. And it's Peyton Vince of the We Like Sportz Podcast. Plenty more to end up joining us. Maybe they won't. Who knows? Just the way things go usually with this podcast. But anyways, nevertheless, plenty to talk about today. We're live from 5:30 to 6:30 tonight. We Like Sportz Podcast. Also, keep an eye on our website, too. We are making a small change. Right now, it's welikesportspc.com.wordpress.com. That'll be changed within the next, 48 hours or so. So stay tuned if you're following the website. Stay tuned on our Twitter at We Like Sportz PC. Yeah, We Like Sportz with the Z PC. I had to think about that. That's my way of always remembering it. But, Ed, how are you doing?
Doing real well. I got on my Brown stuff today because obviously the passing of the late, great Jim Brown, 87 years old, went to go be with the Lord. But, I see a lot of stuff going on. I saw the New York Times. I saw ESPN. And I just want to say, when somebody passes away, the first thing you don't have to do is put all the bad things that he's done in his life. And there's a time and place for that. But Jim Brown on the football field, I think he's the greatest football player of all time. I think he's obviously the greatest Cleveland Brown of all time. And it's sad for the city of Cleveland because he was such a great ambassador to Cleveland. Watching him in the finals with LeBron, and LeBron bowed to him, and then the interaction that they had. I mean, legend knows legends, and obviously in 2016 when we won the championship in Cleveland, and Jim Brown handed the Larry O'Brien Trophy over to LeBron, the passing of 1964 to 2016 and the ending of the curse. So, it's sad to see a guy go because my parents always talked about Jim Brown and how the Browns were so great back in the day. And it was, sad to see that he passed away, but because of time and everything. But yeah, shout out to Jim Brown.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was definitely a harder hit than I think anybody expected for being a Browns fan or even just a fan of being any of the Ohio teams. I think that could affect Cincinnati Bengals fans as well. I mean, Jim Brown was a legend, and at this point, too, I'm not saying sports are fixed, but maybe this is the changing of the tide now. Maybe this is when the Browns win a Super Bowl for Jim Brown. Houston won it with Hurricane Harvey before. Washington Nationals won it for a reason. Boston Red Sox had the Boston bombing. There's always some kind of correlation. And I mean, I always hate to be the controversy, the conspiracy theory type person, but I wouldn't be shocked if that were to happen that way. I mean, honestly, you never know what could happen, and that would be the time that it would happen, honestly.
Well, I like your script, and I hope that you talk to the people in New York and the NFL offices, and they see that script too, because I think it would be great if Cleveland could at least make a late postseason run this year. And then, obviously I saw something just before I got on the show with you. The Haslams, they plan to honor Jim Brown in some big way. And the Haslams, the one thing since they've owned the Browns, they've always done things when it comes to celebrating things in a big way. Now, the winning on the football field is something that they need to turn around, but they've always done good by that. So I can't wait to see what they have in store for the 2023 season, and obviously something commemorating Mr. Jim Brown.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure it's going to be some type of form of patch probably as well on the uniforms throughout the year. And I mean, they're going to be playing for an additional purpose now too, which you never know how that fuels the team. You never know how it's going to end up having that reaction. I mean, Jim Brown was always consistently, when he could be, at those games for any Cleveland team, whether it's the Browns, the Guardians, the Cavs. I mean, you mentioned him and LeBron. That was one of the most monumental moments probably in sports history in Cleveland. Even though LeBron's no longer in Cleveland, they're kind of a similar cohesive unit. They're kind of just that line of symmetry, and you kind of see one another. It's just one in LeBron James deals with it on social media, and Jim Brown, that wasn't an issue back then. That wasn't a thought, social media. I think Jim Brown had it worse. Jim Brown had to deal with that in person, the attacks, the words in person instead of online with the tweet. And I think that makes him, Jim Brown, that much more of an influencer, or that much more of just that all-being person that he was overall, and that activist in him.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Peyton, because, one thing about him when he was growing up, same with the Jackie Robinsons and everything, it's the fear of the unknown. One thing about with social media and everything that we've got going on nowadays, we pretty much know what's the attacks that we get from the trolls and things like that. A lot of people like to say it with words, but they hide behind burner accounts. I mean, back in the day, like people like Jim Brown, when they go from city to city, you didn't know what you were walking into. I mean, like you said, you were dealing with people face to face and the unknown and the fear from that aspect. And I think that would obviously be more, intimidating than anything that we see on social media nowadays. I mean, social media can be, annoying by all means, but I don't wake up and say, I check my Twitter and say, oh, I'm going to die today or anything like that. And back in the day, as sad as it was, and I'm glad this country is getting better. But those athletes had to overcome those fears and then go on the football field or whatever field that they had to play their game on and perform. And then so I mean I don't know. I think that would be tough, mentally. But Jim Brown, the consummate professional, and I'll say one thing about this year. If Kevin Stefanski ever gets away from running the ball, I think Jim Brown, he's going to see that patch and think maybe one more run with Nick Chubb, and I think that could help the Cleveland Browns out.
But there's always that correlation, too, of both. I want to say when we were doing the radio show on Friday, there's 3 people that are all-time with, like, most rushing yards per game. Jim Brown was, I think, number 1 with 102 per game. Barry Sanders was at, like, 101 or 99. And Nick Chubb was shortly behind Barry Sanders, I want to say, in the 3rd spot, too. So he's in good company, to say the least, and it just shows how good and how great those running backs were in Jim Brown, in Barry Sanders when they were active.
I've always said that, I didn't get to see Jim Brown play. I've always said I got to see Barry Sanders ruin my Thanksgiving Day in 1989 when the Lions beat the Browns 13-10, and I've never seen it, especially on turf. Barry Sanders, and it's quite ironic, he only played 9 years in the league just like Jim Brown did. And, you see the stats that Emmitt Smith put up. Jim Brown basically had, I'm not saying he had the same amount as Emmitt because Emmitt's the number 1, but for basically half the amount of carries that Emmitt Smith had, he averaged over 100 yards a game. Not too many people have done that. And it's just like, wow, I wonder what Jim Brown would have been if he would have played an extra couple of years. And obviously that beef with Modell, and probably the Browns would have had like 1 or 2 Super Bowls, because when he retired, was getting into that Super Bowl era. If he could have hung on for another 3-4 years, you probably had to beat Green Bay and Minnesota and the likes of Kansas City. But I had no doubt that the Browns with their running attack could have got that done. So once again, Art Modell, screwed Cleveland by, when Jim Brown was making that movie, The Dirty Dozen, and he wanted to get back, and Art told him to get back to training camp. And Jim Brown's like, well, I'll just retire then. And that's what he did. And Jim Brown always marched to his own beat. And that's what makes him great, and the activism and everything that he did. And it's just like, you don't tell Jim Brown what to do, because that's a man amongst boys when he was out there.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, that's the thing too, is that like I knew enough about Jim Brown, but like I forget the details from time to time that he did have his football career shortened because of Hollywood. He wanted to do other things. And I mean, the fact that you look at those statistics, you look at those numbers, he's a legend in its own right, and he only had a partial football career, in which the longevity of a running back now is about how long he played.
Exactly. Another fun story about that people, don't know about is that when Art Modell bought the Browns in 1961, he didn't like Paul Brown. They didn't get along. And Jim Brown didn't get along with Paul Brown either, because Jim Brown was a newer cat, and Paul Brown was set in his way. So actually for the first couple of years, Art and Jim Brown were actually together to get Paul Brown out, and then Art obviously fired Paul Brown, and that made a lot of people in Cleveland upset. Then a couple of years later, they would win the championship with Blanton Collier as their head coach, and and then obviously Art and Jim Brown had their falling out. But it was nice to see when I was growing up, and I'm a little bit older, I'm 43, but when Bill Belichick was in Cleveland, Art Modell and Jim Brown actually made up, and you look at those games from like 1991 until like 1995 when they left. Jim Brown was always on the sidelines with Bill Belichick. I'd always love to see the conversation between Belichick and Jim Brown, because they were men of few words, but those had to be interesting conversations. So I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in those things. But yeah, Jim Brown was, that's one thing about Jim Brown. And if you look at him too, he always was wearing a Cleveland Browns, whatever it be a hat, whether it be, I mean, he represented Cleveland to the fullest, and he never took that away when he was in LA and doing his thing. And I appreciate him, and anybody that, sticks up and reps Cleveland, I'm always for. And, just think that we've had in Cleveland, the greatest NBA player, LeBron James, the greatest football player in Jim Brown. I mean, that's quite some good stuff right there, Peyton.
Yeah, I mean, you end up wishing almost that you could have a trifecta and have 3, but I mean, who knows? You could end up saying maybe in the end of 7 years from now, Jose Ramirez.
Yep.
So you never know. I mean, you never know, honestly. It definitely varies. But Change gears for a little bit. Want to definitely give a shout out to our sponsors as well. Casey's not here. You're wearing a dress shirt. I'm wearing a t-shirt, so I'm the biggest man in the room right now, I guess. But anyways, you had the sleeves rolled up. I wasn't ready for that. That makes sense now. There we go. Ed's using Titan Nutrition. You should too. TitanNutrition.net. Man, I can't speak. Let's try this again. TitanNutrition.net / We Like Sportz with a Z. Get 10% off your order. Again, that's a pre-workout, protein, any kind of supplement that you need. Titan Nutrition has you covered. Definitely check out those supplements. Check out that website, TitanNutrition.net / We Like Sportz. Get your 10% off. Order your pre-workout, order your protein, order your supplements through them. But to change gears, we're going to go into football probably a little bit shortly. I know we hit on it early on, which is great with Jim Brown. I'm glad we at least took some time with that. But I definitely want to end up getting into baseball first, go into basketball to talk some playoffs, and then in the end, if we have time for the Browns and other NFL news that are coming out and made newsworthy. Frustrating news out of Las Vegas, in my opinion, and I'm not having the video played, but it irritates me. But if you want to see it, WeLikeSportsPC.wordpress.com. There's an article on that if you are so entitled and inclined to see that video. Anyways, nonetheless, baseball talk. Ed, what are your thoughts on the Guardians after this past weekend in New York? I mean, let's kind of ease our way into this. Let's play the video first of Kipnis and Lindor because that's where it all started. And then from there, we'll talk about that and then go into the Guardians versus the Mets. But Jason Kipnis on Francisco Lindor being a leader on MLB with AJ Pierzynski. I mean, very, very interesting things, as well as Lindor's answer I didn't have. But Lindor kind of blew him off. But his wife on social media, don't you worry, she had him covered. But anyways, here's the video.
All those veterans and no leadership.
Ooh. Well, you played with Lindor. Is he a leader?
I'm going to repeat it again. All those veterans and no leadership. If everybody's a veteran there, you're kind of just under the assumption that everybody's taking care of their business and going about the things the right way. But you kind of need someone to be those bumper pins kind of on each side. If people start getting out of line a little bit, it helps keep people in order and in track and focus on the same thing. Everybody gets a little comfortable because there's all veterans and you don't really have to worry about what you're doing because it's like you can do no wrong. You kind of forget that little being on edge when you're a young guy and you're like, oh, I don't know if a veteran saw me or I shouldn't be doing this. You lose that kind of should I be doing the right thing mentality.
I mean, the thing is that definitely shocked a lot of people, I guess, and it wasn't expected, especially during that time frame when Lindor and Kipnis were playing. I mean, they always ended up having each other's back then, you thought. But, I mean, it goes to show, what are the thoughts on if Lindor's actually a leader? This past weekend with the Mets, Friday night, he looked like a leader, unfortunately. I hate it, but it happened. And it just seems, at least from my perspective of being a Guardians fan, I don't like Lindor's smile anymore. It's all cockiness. It's all irritating. I don't like the individual anymore. And I'm siding with Jason Kipnis initially. And I still am right now because he ended up even saying too, hey, I'm a man. I admitted my mistake. Didn't mean my words that way, but they came out that way. I mean, baseball has a storyline finally with that, but Kipnis isn't in the league anymore, so it's kind of pointless.
I totally agree. You know what? I'll say this, okay? And I've always said this. In Cleveland, they always talk about the rain delay in 2016. But I always say this. Before the rain delay, there was the bottom of the ninth. And you had Kipnis, and you had Lindor up. And Kipnis gave it a ride. Unfortunately, he went foul.
Yep.
And Lindor, I think, fouled, popped out to the right fielder. But here's what I always say about Lindor. If you were so great, Frankie, you were smiling in Cleveland, you thought you were so great and everything like that, Derek Jeter would have gotten it done for the Yankees, I believe. Frankie, for as much as like you went and you got your contract, and I know you're good and you're great and all that, whatever the case may be, you ain't that great. But here's the thing, like you're not clutch yet because like I always felt like that 2016, that was the time for Frankie Lindor to break out. Now I know he hit the home run against the Yankees, the grand slam in the one series.
That was it, though. That was it. That's his only thing that he has to accomplish.
Yep, and in 2016, bottom of the ninth, Game 7 of the World Series, he could have done something. I know Jeter would have. And I think that as a Cleveland fan, I get frustrated because I see all these players come to Cleveland, even the Manny Ramirez's and all that, and they leave because obviously they go for their big contract. And I get that. Their agents are saying this, and you got to go. I get it. The Players Union would be mad if they didn't. But at the same time, it's like they want to, kind of take a jab at Cleveland on the way. And I thought Frankie, with, being lazy, calling me Frankie instead of Francisco. I never remembered at the time that he was in Cleveland that he ever corrected a reporter saying, no, call me Francisco instead of Frankie. He only said that on the way out. And it just seemed like you got what you wanted. You got your way out. And I don't feel like, there was any need to kind of, put a wedge in between your time in Cleveland and your new beginning in New York now. I don't know what the point of that was. And maybe there was more locker room drama because maybe Kipnis, speaking out, is only kind of reflecting and showing us, hindsight 2020 of what really was going on in the locker room. And, Tito, obviously, if that was the case, is a better manager than what we give him credit for. Because not only do you have to with about the wins and the losses, but like Mike Hargrove, when he was managing the Indians in the 90s with all the different personalities, Baerga, Bell and Lofton, he said that was part of it too, just the personal interactions between the players. And obviously, I thought they were a cohesive unit, but maybe it wasn't as cohesive as we thought off the field. And, and obviously we're seeing it played out now. So I don't know, as a fan of baseball, I mean, does it spoil like my feelings of 2016? No, but I think to your point, every time I see Francisco, because I'll be real, I'll call him Francisco instead of Frankie. Don't want to be called lazy. When I see him smile, it makes me kind of want to puke a little bit. But and his leadership, I don't know. He got the home run, he got the base hit or whatever to win it. Is leadership just playing better? I mean, yeah, for $331 million. He should be a leader if it comes to that, but I don't know if he's ever going to be a dog, a leader in the clubhouse that like a Kipnis was, Dirtbag was, and I don't know. I mean, I hope the Mets don't ever win a World Series when he's there.
Right, and I mean, I think the most frustrating thing with me with Frankie, I'm calling him Frankie, Francisco Lindor, either one, Mr. Smile. It doesn't really matter. I mean, these were so many like different changes that happened because the New York media got to him. And I mean, he did crumble under pressure, if we realize that or not. At least once he got through it, but he crumbled under pressure. I mean, it's just frustrating seeing him in New York. The most frustrating thing is 2019 when the All-Star game was here, and he's bragging about his city. This is Cleveland. This is my city. Welcome to my city. My city. My city. My city. My city. Welcome. This is my place. Frankie lives here. Blah blah blah. This is awesome. It's the national spotlight, though, that he wanted in reality. It's not the fact that it was Cleveland. It was the spotlight's on me. I'm 25, 26. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And that's what it turned into. And I think after a while, you see the smug smile on his face, like his reply back to Kipnis. And that's why people from Cleveland aren't a fan of Lindor anymore. Because in the end, was that smile in Cleveland, was that genuine? Or was it actually just, hey, I got to smile because the spotlight's on me here, but in New York, I'll smile, but it's actually more meant because I'm happy in this scenario. I'm in New York. I'm on the spotlight. I have all these things going on now. It's great. I'm actually happy. That's the way it comes off now when he's in New York and he's still having that Mr. Smile mentality.
Maybe just a thought, Peyton. Maybe it was Kipnis that woke Lindor up from his nap during Game 7 of the World Series, and he's not gotten over that yet. Maybe there's some beef from the falling out from that. Because, what type of leader takes a nap when you got a rain delay in Game 7 of the World Series? Like, I know every athlete's different, but I don't know if I'd ever come out and admit that. Like, oh, I was, especially if the team lost. It'd be different if the team won. Oh, yeah, by the way, I took a nap, woke up, we played a half inning, we won the World Series. I don't think afterwards, after, the city of Cleveland is, still been since 1948, we're reeling after blowing a 3-1 lead. I mean, it hurts to lose to the lovable loser Cubs. And now we got the longest drought. And Frankie's like, yeah, I took a nap, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't know if that was exactly from a PR standpoint, that's the way. And then Kipnis, the way he played, and, they don't call him Dirtbag for nothing. Maybe he didn't like it. I don't know. I mean, it just seems kind of odd that he was kind of so nonchalant about it.
It's just who he is, though. It comes to be that way. That's who Frankie Lindor is, Francisco Lindor. But instead, enough about Francisco Lindor temporarily. How about we invite a new guy in? His name's Riggs. What's going on, Riggs? We're talking about Kipnis and Lindor and the Guardians and the New York Mets. So I guess this is the question for the group and what we've been waiting for. After having the Mets for 3 games, a doubleheader on Sunday, a 1-run high-scoring game loss on Friday, how do we feel about the Guardians right now? I mean, it's looking rough up and down throughout consistently. And I know it's not June yet, but still, We're under 500 right now, and I feel like it's a little concerning right now if you're a baseball fan, especially a Guardians fan.
Yeah, just like what me and you spoke about at the gym when I looked at their record, and I was just like, man, come on, guys, get it together. Like, you're exactly right, Peyton. It's not June, but our expectations are a little bit high for the Guardians, and I honestly, I think we're entitled to that. You know what I'm saying? So it's just they need to put their foot on the gas and they need to figure it out as soon as possible, at least before the All-Star break. Got to get above 500. 500 baseball to me just seems average. I know I'm not a professional athlete myself, speaking on those terms. I'm not out there actually physically playing the game. I don't know what those guys are going through, but just when I just see 500, it just looks boring. It's just like you're not even trying, or it's just boring baseball, or a boring baseball club to me, or something's happening in the locker room, or someone's toxic.
It's like golf. If you're under par, you want to be under par, but like that par, that 72 that you're hitting, if you're above it, you're subpar. Literally, like it's the opposite, like a bad thing anywhere else outside of golf. And that's the way. If you're under 500, you seem like you're subpar, but in reality, if we're talking golf terms, you're definitely over par right now, and it's not good, and you're probably going to be cut by Saturday.
Well, I just got to say that welcome, Riggs. I want everybody to know that, Riggs and I, we are part of the bloodline. I know people don't know that, but that's the one thing. We are part of the bloodline.
We the ones.
Yes. And the only thing I'm going to say about the Guardians is the way they're losing. They don't score any runs. Okay, so they lose 2-0. Okay, fine. We're used to that. But when they do score runs like they did Friday night, 9 runs, that's still not enough because the closers come in and blow that. And then, on Saturday, Sunday, the first game, when they come back and, take the lead, well, they give it right away because the closers, it's like no matter what they do, it seems like they find a new problem and a new way to lose. And I think that now the losing, it's becoming, infectious with this team. And we got to just we're playing the White Sox. We got to go out and win at least 2 out of 3. We got to start winning series again. And I think that's what Tito, and that's one thing I think Tito will turn it around. I tweeted this out today, which obviously nobody really liked it because nobody wants to hear this, but we are only 4 games back in the loss column. And I know as we get closer and closer, people don't want to hear that, but still this division's horrible. And I still think we have talent on this team. Everybody's playing bad at the same time. And it just seems like there's no hope. But if 1 or 2 guys like Karen Check or Clase, if they just turn it around in 1 week, that would help. If 1 or 2 more hitters get hot, it's fixable. But right now, everybody's playing so bad, it just seems like impossible to fix. But I think Tito's the right man, to get this thing fixed. He's done it before, and God, I hope he does it again because we need it.
Love me some Tito. I don't know if you elaborated on this last week on the show, Peyton, about you driving around and seeing a man on an electric scooter.
Did I mention that?
You did mention it, but you know what? It's such a great story. If you want to delve back into it, go ahead.
Oh, I just saw a bald man on a scooter. I didn't see him this week too, because they're playing at 6:15 here shortly. So hopefully it's a better result with the Guardians. I did want to end up hitting on one thing too, because Ed, you ended up writing an article on it as well too. We're talking about the Yankees still, and they just seem to be in trouble more and more often. We're talking one New York team, the Mets, to the Yankees. Here's the video of the latest substance check and an ejection finally happening for once. So a change up for the Yankees, but this is the 3rd time now that they've been caught. A little ridiculous, but here's the video.
They checked his hand. All 4 umpires now talking with Aaron Boone, and Herman, who's been perfect through 3, was just thrown out of the game for obviously something on his hand that they did not think was allowable. When he was coming out of the dugout, he was stopped by an umpire to check going into the game. Usually it's going out of the game. And they checked. All 4 umpires came and checked, and they ended up throwing him out.
Checking his hand, checking the glove. They've already got his glove. You can see right there. There's trouble brewing. Now they're going to consult and make a collective decision. Problem is, it's sort of like getting audited by the IRS. Once they open your file, they're going to keep checking you, and that's what Domingo Germán has already had one issue that's been well publicized. So that's why they checked him coming out from the dugout, because there's a history here.
But this has ramifications, David, because as with Max Scherzer, you get thrown out of the game, you are then suspended for the next 10 games. And the A's.
I feel like there's a lot of leniency with that rule, though, honestly. I mean, you ended up having, even in his back pocket, you see a little bit of a brown mark by his back pocket near his ass. I mean, unless if he's a grown man not taking care of business, why is that there? Why is that there?
I loved what he said. It's like, the IRS audit. Once they open up your file, they're going to keep checking on you because it's like you're already a repeat offender. And I'm sorry, as a sports fan, I'm going to be very biased right now against the evil empire. Doesn't surprise me. I'm sorry. I mean, yeah, I can understand greatness when it comes to players on the Yankees and that organization. But just, I don't know. The second I know it's a Yankees player, like, it's just like, huh, okay, tell me something I didn't know.
What else is new scenario almost.
Exactly. Like, oh, I'm shocked, like, yeah, I don't know. That's just.
Well, they got to keep up with the Astros. They see them cheating and winning, so the Yankees are like, well, we got to do our own thing now.
Well, like, the thing is, too, is, like, to even take it a step further now, too, I don't know, like, this just hit me now. You ended up last week, I think it was on Tuesday, or Monday night. This has literally been a week's worth of the Yankees cheating because you had Aaron Judge magically, man, that timing, too, that banner just popped up, too. That was great. Anyways, Riggs flexed that for the non-camera audience, so make sure to go to titannutrition.net/We Like Sportz, get 10% off. That's exactly why, for the non-camera audience, Riggs did that. That triggered a promo, actually. But anyways,
I forgot I was on camera for that split second because we worked out earlier and I was feeling my pump. But keep going.
But anyways, though, you had Aaron Judge look back at the dugout, but it turned out to be that was because Aaron Boone got ejected with the Blue Jays series. That was very tense. You ended up having that possibly cheating, looking down at the catcher's sides, pitch cam, whatever it may be. You have, I think there's 2 different Yankees pitchers that ended up getting checked for foreign substances on their person. I mean, it's just the Yankees, though. Are we shocked? Like, that was, I guess, like, where do you go from there? Does the Yankees, the IRS file, continue to end up being checked? Or is there a lot of leniency, too? Because Germán should have been suspended a long time ago. This is the second time. The last time they told him to wash his hands. I think there was another Yankees player that got told, wash your hands and go back out on the field. What the hell? Why is that allowed? That's not in the rules, right?
They draw people. It's the Yankees. They draw. You know what's going to happen too. The Yankees are going to, keep getting warned. Go wash your hands. Keep doing this, and then as soon as another team does it, they're going to get ejected, 10-game suspension, and then the Major League Baseball is going to say, well, it's happened a lot, and it's all basically been the Yankees 20 times getting caught, and then as soon as another team does something, they're going to be the ones that get their pitcher, ejected, and then 10-game suspension, and it's like the Yankees are just buying up all this, okay, like a parent, disciplining what the one kid, and you don't really get in trouble, and then the other kid does it, and then they throw the book at them, and it just seems like it's unfair, but I don't know. I mean, if you're the Yankees and you're not really getting disciplined, I mean, I don't know. I mean, why would you stop your behavior up to this point? Because they're in a dogfight. You look at Tampa and how much they're running away with that AL East, and maybe they're thinking, I got 3 or 4 teams, not only Tampa, but Baltimore ain't going away, Toronto's not going away, and obviously that pitching staff besides Garrett Cole, I mean, they got some good arms, but I wouldn't say there's any bona fide, this guy's going to go out and dominate. So they're looking for an unfair advantage, and I mean, they always say if you're not cheating, you're not trying. But as a Major League Baseball fan, I'm kind of getting sick of it because it's just, like you said, it's the same team. It's the Yankees. It's the same old offenders. And as a team like, the Guardians who are struggling right now, the last thing I want to see is the Yankees exactly cheating. That's not on my, personal best things to see.
Just a slap on the wrist, though, in the end. That's all you get. Yankees, Astros. I feel like definitely, and I'm going to be that guy for a second, and I'm going to be that guy temporarily. But if it happened to Cleveland, James Karinchak didn't get away with it. So, I mean, come on.
Gone.
Let's be real here and call what the Yankees are in the end of the day. But anyways, though, the last thing, I don't want to talk about the Yankees because I feel like that's just a rabbit hole we could go down and just talk and just make fun of and just shame over and over again. But this isn't the We Shame Yankees podcast. This is the We Like Sportz podcast, different podcast. But I wanted to end up hitting on baseball attendance. CJ, who's probably not going to make it in today, but he ended up tagging me in this. it's a great statistic. This weekend, attendance for MLB was 1,518,016 was the best weekend attendance across the MLB in April or May in more than 6 years now. Is this a sign at this point the rule change is working because people are going to ball games? I mean, what are your guys' thoughts? Change it up and head over to football.
I think that could possibly play a little bit of a favor into it. You know, you got the fathers out there trying to get their sons or nephews into, you know, the America's greatest pastime. And like, you know, I don't want to harp on it too much. Some of this younger generation, their attention span is very short. So, you know, maybe bringing the kids out to the ballpark for the last couple months. Hell yeah, I think it's done some greatness for the MLB, and maybe that rule change have done some positive for this. You know, they need who doesn't want the attendance? Who doesn't want that money and that revenue? So, I mean, kudos to the MLB for, I guess, figuring it out for now, you know. So I don't think they'll tell us their secret. Like, yeah, it was this the whole time. Haha, we got you. You know, so that's just my opinion on that situation.
I you know, sometimes unintended consequences, like I can't say there's a direct correlation because I don't know if there's enough data or whatever, but I mean, anytime that you can go somewhere with your kids, especially if you're a family, and know that something's going to be, you know, 2.5 hours, nothing too long, you know, before it was, you know, 3 hours, maybe 4 hours, depending, and you don't know. But with this, you have a little bit more of a window that you can block off, and you know that pretty much, you know, games are a certain amount of time. I think that obviously helps with planning, especially, you know, the soccer moms out there that love their schedules and this and that, you know. And also the weather's been nice. And I think one thing about baseball too, like in this country, is like I think things go through spurts. You look at the NBA playoffs. I know we'll get into that, but you know, there's not a dominant team in Major League Baseball right now. I mean, there's a lot of these teams, you know, they're still in it right now, especially with good weather. You want to go to the ballpark once or twice a year. Why not go now when your team's not out of it per se? And then, you know, it's spring and spring has sprung and it's getting close to summer. Kids will be out of school. So this was the perfect weekend to have the highest attendance in 6 years.
I mean, it's a great sign. I mean, it just goes to show you, even if you don't like the rules, the pitch clock, good idea. When those games, I mean, look at Sunday Night Baseball. You had the Mets and the Guardians on Sunday Night Baseball. I think they were done by 9:30.
Yep.
So in reality, that's an ESPN game that could go to 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock at times. And now you ended up getting out of there early. I'm not against it. And more I hear people that aren't against it either. So, I mean, it's just goes to show you that the facts are there and it's working out for the right way. But last thing I want to hit on for baseball, which is mind-blowing, Oscar Mercado against the Dodgers yesterday went 3 for 3. His last at bat, he got out, but he went 3 for 3 with 5 RBIs, and his batting average as of right now, probably very minimal games, but 545 is his batting average in 5 games. So that one game obviously helps his cause a little bit, but how does that feel as a Guardians fan that you parted ways with him, but he wasn't that good to begin with? But I mean, at this point, you can't do anything about it.
It seems like it's phony baloney. And what's that song? My baloney has a first name. It's Oscar, Oscars. And
I hate baloney.
I don't know. I don't think it's gonna last long. But you know, then I see Owen Miller got tweeted out from Milwaukee. He's blowing up too right now. So I mean, it's just adding salt to the wounds.
Luke Maile, don't look at how many home runs he's hitting right now, because right now he's at 3, which is more than any Guardians catcher right now. Austin Hedges, I haven't kept up with. But if we're going to talk about all these Guardians players, though, it's just going to cause trouble, all these former ones, because in a year they could be out of the league. Look at Bradley Zimmer, too, as well. It changes all the time. But again, last but not least, shout out to baseball for actually figuring it out and getting the most fan attendance since 2017. It's been a long time. So shout out to the MLB for figuring that out. But before we end up heading into football, want to give a shout out to the Snooze You Lose podcast, Uncle Joe, the Black Bookie, at the Black Bookie on Twitter. Every Sunday, for the most part, Snooze You Lose podcast, pick of the week. We Like SportsPC.com. The Black Bookie, Uncle Joe has you covered. He'll have you for the lock of the week. And again, stay tuned to the website. If it's not WeLikeSportsPC.com, just go to WeLikeSportsPC.wordpress.com. Little change up right now, but again, 48 hours, that'll be changed up. Again, shout out to Uncle Joe, the Black Bookie, and the Snooze You Lose podcast. But heading over to football, though, Riggs, we ended up already hitting it earlier on in the show, but I want you to end up having some attention for it as well. I'm sure you want to talk about Jim Brown just as much as Ed and I talked about Jim Brown to start the show.
Man, as someone, okay, how can I put this? Besides the Cleveland Browns organization, I just wanted to just say that, like, rest in peace, rest in power to a great man. Besides his contributions to the football field, I've grown up and I was told from family members that he was an African-American activist, and I've had family members that have met him. He was also in movies. It just sucks because, as someone who really doesn't watch the Cleveland Browns anymore because I, lost my mind, one day there's a possibility I will wear orange and brown again on Sundays. But as of right now, for these next few years, I can't. But in my honest opinion, I think he's one of the best to ever run with the damn ball in his hand. I think he's one of the toughest. I think he was one of the absolute, meanest on the field. It's just that organization, the Cleveland Browns, they lost a spirit. They lost, their heart. They don't have a logo on their helmet. If there was a logo on their helmet, it would be Jim Brown probably. So, I feel like that organization has took a big loss in that franchise because how many times have we seen Jim Brown at training camps talking to people like your Trent Richardsons and Brian Hartlines, etc. Anyone that was on that field, when that man spoke to them, they listened. It was out of respect. And I don't know, man. It sucks. I hope the Cleveland Browns, as the organization and the football players on that team, I hope they play their asses off. It would be nice if, the stories, kind of completed if they do make a good playoff win or whatever the hell happens. But, rest in peace, rest in power to a man named Jim Brown, salute.
Absolutely.
Nice.
I mean, you couldn't have said it any better than, all combined with us, we ended up having enough time on Jim Brown, too, that him and LeBron, another thing for perspective-wise, similar guy, just different eras. You have Jim Brown that didn't have the social media era, and he had the words to his face. The same thing that LeBron's going through, the F you, the, go jump in a hole kind of idea. LeBron's getting tweeted that, but that's through social media. Jim Brown, as a person, didn't have social media. He had words in person, and words always hurt more than a social media posting. And I think that's why you have a similarity with the both of them, but both good on both of them for being an activist. Being able to stick up for your beliefs, that's huge. But to not have social media and to deal with words on a daily or in just a public place compared to getting a tweet from a burner account, that burner account, I'd rather end up having tweets from and tweets at me about instead of just, okay, you're just a giant piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. Those words end up they just weigh on you more and more as time goes on. That's the correlation between the two of them make very interesting points.
It's funny that you say that because I'm pretty sure if this is Jim Brown that said this, someone out there can even quote me on this. I'm pretty sure I heard a story that Jim Brown said that they were getting ready to play a game and they were leaving the visiting hotel and they had a marching band and they were playing this song like Pete's, basically like your funeral march. Dun, dun, dun. Like, okay, you guys are about to go on this bus and you're about to go get slaughtered. And I guess like Jim Brown took that personally. It was like, hey, okay, we're going out there and we're about to rip their faces off. I'm pretty sure that's a Jim Brown story. If someone else wants to go and look up that, go for it. But I would definitely look that up. It's funny how we just talk about that and how words can hurt, especially if you don't have social media, how you were just talking about that. So it's just, that's crazy. I'm pretty confident that's the Jim Brown story. I'm gonna have to look that up.
But it all goes to sports and it goes to mind games, though. In the end, you have to end up, if you don't have a strong mentality, a strong mental game. I mean, Marshawn Lynch always said it best. And he ended up bringing up, not only does he eat Skittles, but he always brought up his mental. His mentality. If you get into somebody's head, your mental is all screwed up. You can't get somebody to, even as simple as taps being played as you walk out of the hotel, you can't let that get in your head. You have to end up answering and you have to respond and you have to end up moving forward, because if you let that get in your head and you're like, oh, well, then we're actually right. We're down by 7 right now. That tap song that I heard on my way out Why is it true? Because I'm allowing that to be true. You have to end up being the better person, the better individual, to end up going back to that hotel that night, or just letting them at that hotel know if you don't visit again, hey, we beat them. Where's your tabs at now? Shove that right back in your face. So be it. That's always been the way of sports. It's that in your face mentality, and dealing with that and having social media. You have your trash talking now. I mean, high school athletes, even, I'm sure they deal with it. That was a thing when I was in high school. You're tweeting back and forth to the opposing players from these certain schools that you're rivals against. You ended up getting in trouble from it from time to time because that's high school. You got to be careful with your words, but words end up having on social media that trash talking. That made it more fun. But in person, you can't end up describing that unless if you're there in the moment. And social media technology's changed. It's not going back to that. But that era, there's still people that still had to live through that, which is mind-blowing. And that comprehension of not having that to somebody that's in his late 20s. Somebody that's even in his 30s or 40s even, I could probably say the same thing. There was still some form of technology. There was some form of computer throughout your life. There's an era that never had that whatsoever, and that was brand new. So all the adjustments that Jim Brown had to end up living for as well and living through, not only just the public presentation of himself, but so much has changed in his lifetime as well, if you break it down from that perspective. But again, though, shout out to Jim Brown. Great individual, hell of a Browns player, hell of an influencer, activist for the Browns as well. Who knows what the future holds for the Browns? And that's coming from a Steelers fan. I'm not going to be that guy here. I'm not going to be the Steelers guy in the room to end up talking about ill of Jim Brown because it's not right to begin with. I'm not the New York Post like Ed in Columbus said.
Yep.
But anyways, though, I wanted to hit on this from the NFL perspective, and I think that's about it. Again, I said it. Henry Ruggs, that video surfaced on Twitter. If you want to see the video, it's on our website, WeLikeSportsPC.com or WeLikeSportsPC.wordpress.com. Check it out. It's Henry Ruggs Development. If you want to see that, so be inclined, or it's at We Like Sports PC on our Twitter, I'm sure, as well. But I wanted to talk about Urban Meyer having the news come out, or at least from the Twitter account I saw it from, and I'm sure it's true just because Urban Meyer didn't last long as a head coach for Ohio State. But he said a variety of different things to Joe Burrow, including that he throws like a girl and he'll never be better than a Division II quarterback. Well, Herb, guess what? He's a little bit better than a Division II quarterback.
Well, as somebody close to the situation, obviously living in Columbus with proximity to the Ohio State University, you know, the one thing we love about Urban Meyer is the 7-0 record against the team up north. But when it comes to a lot of his evaluations of players and a lot of his behavior off the field, we're not so keen on one Urban Meyer. And you know, you can say what you want about Ryan Day the last 2 years against the team up north. We're not happy with the results. But as a man, I can say that, you know, he exemplifies all of the qualities that you would want for somebody that represents the Ohio State University. And it's not shocking, though, to Urban Meyer when he was at Jacksonville, how he treated his players and some of the things that he would say, like to the kicker. I remember one time, you know, he kind of got into it with them. And it's bizarre behavior.
What was that? If you're still there, you cut out. All right. Well, we'll wait until Ed ends up getting back into a normal universe and out of the Twilight Zone. But, I mean, he hit it right on the head, though, with Urban Meyer. So many people just that it was through it. I mean, he was a good coach just in the wrong era. I guess that kind of goes with the subject of today's show. It's just the fact that you end up having this hard-nosed football playing coach, football players, no social media. It's just like that generational gap. He didn't connect with those kids after a certain way. When he was with Chris Leak, Tim Tebow, and the Gators in 2007, 2008, it fit a little bit with his early days with Ohio State, but he's not there for a reason in the end. And, I mean, it just makes sense. But
yeah, some people just need to know when to pass the torch or just know when to, hey, okay, I'm Urban Meyer. I might be a great NFL coach, but hey, let me learn under somebody right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's say, Peyton, you're an NFL coach and I'm coming from college. I'm confident in my abilities, but hey, for a couple of years, let me ride out and be this guy's assistant. And then whenever there's a job that opens up, then hell yeah, I'll interview for it. Because one, I don't want to go in there and waste my time and waste some organization time. But at the end of the day, those guys are getting paid. So, they don't give a damn, so they'll take whatever job. I'm just saying from if it was me, like that's just how I would look at the situation.
And Ed, before you ended up cutting out, you were talking about Urban Meyer and the way he was in Jacksonville and the kicker, and we didn't hear anything else from there.
Okay, yeah, like I said, the things that he said about the kicker, it doesn't befuddle me at all that he would say these things about Joe Burrow and some of the things that he has. As everybody knows, Urban Meyer has an ego, and some of the things he's very harsh when he thinks he's right. And he instead of actually like trying to mitigate a situation or work things out, it's his way or the highway, and it just doesn't work anymore. And I think that he actually tried to take my Wi-Fi down because, one thing, you talk anything about the Ohio State University in a negative way, that they will shut you down. So I better
and you're local too. And you're local too. That doesn't help anything.
Yeah, they got me. They got me on. I think they're outside. I've been watching a car go by, and I gotta, make sure.
Explain
it's not
how you got cut out. Then that definitely makes sense. I understand it now.
I'm not the biggest Urban Meyer fan. I never have been. I appreciate the national championship that he got us, but to me, he's like a Nick Saban. He's a bully, and some of the things that he says, like I would never tell, a recruit or whatever that he throws like a girl. Like I think some of the harsh, like he was a kid that won a state championship at Athens or finished runner-up, had 6 touchdowns. The kid never threw like a girl, and I think for him to say that, and it's kind of like the Bobby Knights and the Woody Hayes, that kind of mentality, it doesn't work anymore. And if you think that you're going to try to win over people by talking like that, you're just going to get them obviously to go somewhere else and become great. And that's what Joe Burrow did. And, as a Browns fan, it pains me to see him in a Bengals uniform, but he's a good guy, and he does a lot of good things for Southeast Ohio. And, he does not throw like a girl.
And I mean, the thing is, too,
No, not at all.
The irritating part that I got from that was the fact that fans were like, well, he did it for motivation. I mean, there's a way to end up motivating your players, but there's also a way to be a crap bag.
Yeah.
And that's what you are.
He's a jerk. He's just a straight up jerk. And he saw what he did at the club with that. I don't even want to get into it, but obviously the thing, and it's like, anybody that would act like that, or, his response to after that was kind of crass too. Like he didn't even want to take personal accountability. You do something wrong, say it's my fault, but it's always somebody else's fault with Urban Meyer. Always.
Well, changing gears, though, enough about Urban Meyer, enough about football. I mean, that was just something I wanted to hit on because it's perfect and it makes sense, and Joe Burrow did enough to prove him wrong. But last segment of the show, last 10 minutes, 12 minutes or so, basketball time, NBA playoffs. Right now, it's 3-0 each side. Miami Heat 3-0 over Boston. The Nuggets over the Lakers 3-0. The NBA Finals don't start until June 1st. I mentioned that to Riggs. Game 4 is tonight for the Lakers in Denver, and I think Miami and Boston is tomorrow. You have a week and a half off of basketball, possibly. Very interesting if that does happen. It is the NBA afterwards. If sports is fixed, and I'm going to be on my conspiracy train, there's going to be a couple more games in there in between, just because if there is, that proves our point. But regardless, though, is it time, with Boston being down 3-0 right now, is it time for Boston to blow up the team? Is that same team going to end up remaining there next year when you have guys like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown? You have a lot of talent. Marcus Smart, Peyton Pritchard, Al Horford, Robert Williams. You have so many guys. I don't think Robert Williams is still there. But anyways, regardless, there's so many guys on that team, though. Boston, I think it's time to look elsewhere. It's time to blow it up. If it didn't work for the Cavs a couple times, like, look at us. We ended up doing it. Boston's been around the same core for a while. What are your guys' thoughts?
I don't know if that's just the traditional Boston Celtics way, or I don't know if there's like Red Auerbach himself will, like curse someone like, no, you have to keep that core foundation. But once again, the playoff, what we said the last time, like it's new coach, different generation. You can't really, your style doesn't mesh with this new time. So if I'm Boston, the people that I had in that, like my starting 5, that core, if I had you more than like 3 to 4 years and you've made no process and we keep getting stuck in a certain round in the playoffs, then I'm going to have to just, kiss you goodbye. It's a business at the end of the day. And as old as that franchise is, I know they want to win. Like it's Boston is title town, they say. So when was the last time the Celtics brought one home? I'm not from there, never been there, so I don't know if there's any sort of pressure on any type of coach that goes there to bring home a championship. But I don't know. Boston's got to figure something out. They need a fresh new five, maybe. At least maybe move a couple pieces. Maybe not blow them up completely, but just, hey, exchange maybe a couple players and then tell some other people like, hey, if you don't work out by this time, you're trade bait. Or just you use someone as trade bait. It's a business.
I mean, you have
Sucks,
two starters right
business.
now with Boston. You have Jaylen Brown. You have Jason Tatum. The Cavs have two stars.
Now,
too.
that's a good
– Darius Garland.
You need a 1-2 combo, too.
Yeah, but in the end, though, Donovan Mitchell
like
has to get paid. Somebody's not going to get paid out of those two. And it's going to be Darius Garland if you keep him. Kind of the same scenario in Boston now. You could have a great 1-2, but in the end, financially, you got to figure out how to pay 1-2.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to answer your question, right, 2008 was their last title. I mean, they lost to Golden State last year in the finals. So it's not like they haven't been there or been very close. Like I said, I don't know about a complete blow up. But just like with the Cavs, I mean, these teams get to a certain point where you're going to win, your 50 to 60 games, and you're going to make it to your second Eastern Conference Finals every year. And if you're content with that, to be a championship team, as we found out in Cleveland, even when you have LeBron and Kyrie, that doesn't even guarantee at all because, you got to play the other champion in the other conference. And we found out that we ran into Golden State. So even if Boston figures it out and say they're the team that goes to the finals, 2 out of the next 3 years, that doesn't guarantee you a championship because the Denver Nuggets lurk and they're pretty good and a well-rounded team. So I think Boston, what they're going to have to do, you have to look at teams like Denver. You have to even look at teams like Miami and how they get it done. It's coaching. Miami does it with coaching. Look at Spoelstra. He's winning with undrafted players. I know Jimmy Butler's a dog, but it's basically Jimmy Butler and it's amazing that what they're doing, and they're beating this Boston team who I felt like they were a better coach last year. And maybe, like I said, I know Joe Mazzulla or whatever like that. Maybe he's not the guy, and maybe it is a coaching thing. You look at Cleveland. I hate to be the JB hater, but, there's other coaches out there like Nick Nurse and the guy that from Milwaukee that lost. Maybe with the right system and that maybe Cleveland gets to the Eastern Conference Finals because, a lot of people, Donovan Mitchell didn't have a great series against the Knicks. And, yeah, a lot of them didn't have. But maybe the fact that Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, maybe they're not used properly. Maybe with a different coach, you'll get the dog out of them. And I think even Cleveland's standpoint is the same as Boston's. If you're content with where you're at, that's fine. But I'm with you, Riggs. You got to tinker with it. Obviously Jaylen Brown, I've heard talk with him. Maybe trade him. Maybe it's a lateral trade where it's Donovan Mitchell. It's Jaylen Brown. It's pieces and parts that maybe you'd look at it like, well, what are you really getting differently? But sometimes playing with somebody different, maybe in Jason Tatum's case, will help him become more of a dog because some of the knock on him is, he shows up for some games, but he's not a dog in all games. So I don't know. I think it still matters. Look at Kyrie and LeBron. They made it work, and that's kind of sad that it ended the way that it did. But maybe Kyrie and Tatum. I don't know. I just think that something needs to be done, and I don't think it's a lack of talent is why they're not moving on. But maybe it's a lack of cohesion. It's a lack of coaching.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing is, though, is with coaching, there's so much you could do, and there's so many available. And right now, if you're looking at the Cavs perspective, and this is something in the future and one of the shows we have to end up hitting on, it's the NBA coaching carousel in the end, because even JB Bickerstaff somehow has a spot with the team, but teams that have won an NBA championship are firing their head coach. The Suns are firing their head coach. Nick Nurse is out there. There's so many talented coaches out there, and you have such a short string that you're on. I mean, there's only so much you could do, and the fact that JB Bickerstaff still has a job, that's kind of the mind-blowing part because other ones that are successful aren't even remaining there. It's just the NBA right now. That's where you're at. 2 more things to hit on today. First one, quick thoughts. Want to get this. James Harden's shopping himself, I guess you could say. He wants a 4-year, $200 million contract to miss shots for the next team he plays for. What are your guys' thoughts?
No.
If I'm the team, because you can't say that because he's trying to go to a new team. I was going to say, like, what have you done for me lately? It's more, what have you done for yourself lately, as in stats, or what can you do for this team? Why should I?
He's a great choker in the playoffs. He's very talented in the regular season. He misses a ton of shots when it comes to the playoffs. In a Game 7 against Boston, he could show you what not to do. What team wants him? Anybody? Anyone? No? Okay.
Mm-hmm. He's going back to Houston, though, probably.
And Casey and I said it one time before, Houston has a lot of attitude issues. Bring in a vet, maybe so be it, but have fun, because it sounds like it's not fun in Houston when you have a bunch of kids that think they know what they're doing in their early 20s. It's not a fun environment. John Wall got out of it for a reason.
It reminded me of the Cavs before LeBron with Wrong Rim Ricky Davis and Darius Miles and all that, Quentin Richards. It just reminded me of that. You got a bunch of young kids that think they know what's going on with attitude problems. And, thank God we got LeBron and won that lottery, because, wow, things could have got ugly.
Riggs, were you going to end up saying something?
I forgot.
Well, anyways, this one will make Riggs talk. I know for a fact it will. Anyways, last topic of the day, last 4 or 5 minutes or so. And again, make sure to listen to us tomorrow morning, Tuesday, 8 a.m., Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, any podcasting platform. WeLikeSportsPC.com. We Like Sports PC on Twitter. Stay tuned. The website portion is going to be a little bit heavier, so to speak, now, because schedule is going to get crazy here. Next Monday, not going to have a show on any time whatsoever. So stay tuned to our social media. Stay tuned on our Facebook as well. We're not going anywhere. It's just going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride, so to speak, with all these speed bumps in the way. But stay tuned on all social media. We're going to figure it out. It is the We Like Sportz podcast in whatever form of the 7 or 8 of us that exist at this point, too. But last but not least, Ja Morant, supposedly somebody made the connection that he ended up having this Chat GPT app that's a AI app or whatever the hell it is. And his apology was, I know I've disappointed a lot of people who have supported me. This is a journey.
Oh, yeah.
There's a more work to do. My words may not mean much right now, but I take full accountability for my actions. I'm committed to continuing to work on myself. And that's the end of the apology. But on that chat app, copy and paste exactly what he said when you say make an apology paragraph that you got called again. That's where he came up with it. So Ja Morant, I mean, Riggs.
I'm just trying to figure out how I can word this. And I don't care. I'm going to break the fourth wall right now. As an African American, from birth, I don't give a fuck. From birth, there's a target on us from birth. And it's rather you're a professional athlete or you're a fucking drug dealer. Now, blue collar man is also there as well, but 9 times out of 10, if you grow up in bad neighborhoods, you're a drug dealer. I'm not a drug dealer, by the way, everybody, or a professional athlete.
What about rapper? What about rapper?
Yeah, rapper too. So basically, you got those stereotypical forms. So he becomes a basketball player. Great, fantastic. You have little boys that look up to you. You have a community that looks up to you. You have generations of your family, other people's family, who try to get away from perpetuating stereotypes. And here we are rooting.
Wow.
And exactly. And here we are rooting for you that you've made it. And then you're out here on social media. And first of all, the guy that recorded you is not your friend, because you're hanging out with rats. Because if I was your friend and you do that type of stuff, you're a professional athlete. Okay, I don't want you to get any type of negativity. I'm going to keep this between us, because no, we live in a generation where people feel like they're fucking superheroes on social media and they want to brag and get some type of clout from that. I'm not going to tell another man what to do with his money. It's not my business to put my hand in his pocket or walk through his front door, which means it's none of my business to ask how much money he makes or ask another man for money or to walk in his house, basically mind my own business. But when you put it out there on social media, I'm going to be honest with you right now. There's people in the African American community that are very, very, very disappointed. And there's words I'm not going to use in my community right now, but he's oh my God, it's not pretty. There's some people out here that applaud that in my community, and that's also stupid and asinine. Do better. Do fucking better. Seriously. There's people out there like just do better. Do better. I don't want to get too deep into it, but he's a dumbass and he needs to do better.
I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I tried this today. It didn't.
You have little kids that look up to you, that live in ghetto ass neighborhoods, and now they're seeing you possibly their favorite basketball player out here doing this. So it's okay. I'm a little boy, and I grow up watching John Morant, and I'm 8 years old, 12 years old, living in the ghetto of whatever part of the United States, and I'm trying not to perpetuate stereotypes and be a fucking thug with a gun or whatever. So now I see him doing that. Well, fuck, he's doing it, so now I do it. If he was going to do that on his own accord, I guarantee there are NBA players that do that shit. But they're smart enough, and the people in their camp, their clique, their friends list, whatever, are smart enough not to get their friend caught up in bullshit like that. You are who you hang out with. You hang out with trash, you're fucking trash. Period.
I mean, on that
note,
I think,
that just...
That was very eloquently said. I couldn't have said it better myself. And you are you're the guy for that. So
I mean, that was
Dave Chappelle. They should have never gave you money. And some people can fill in the blank on that.
So I'll let you guys know this one too, and I wish it worked out. Today's show,
my heart's beating.
Schedules didn't work out, but I tried to get somebody that was a Grizzlies fan that could give their thoughts on the inside of John Morant. But work schedules didn't work out. But stay tuned, because the next show we end up doing, my goal on a Monday, hopefully, is to have this individual that's a Grizzlies fan on the show to talk about John Morant. Because if you're a fan of that team, I'd love to know your insight on the Grizzlies and on John Morant for his actions outside. Because it's one of two ways. It's either similar to Riggs, like he ended up saying, or it's similar to the frustration of any NBA fan that's out there. Because you're getting paid millions of dollars. Look what Kwame Brown ended up saying last week. That was the best thing. He ended up saying and calling you out for being an idiot and a dumbass, and he called you out for 5 minutes straight. There's no other way around it. And that's a man that was a number 1, number 2 overall draft pick, just like you were. And he has an idea of what you're living with, and he ended up calling you out for what it was. It's frustrating to say the least, but something in the plans for the We Like Sportz podcast ahead. But we've ran out of time tonight, guys. We Like Sportz podcast.
It was like, it's like, did I watch a video of an NBA player, or did my cousin send me a fucking video?
Yeah, like a Snapchat almost, for example.
Legit. No, that's legit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what the hell is this? Oh, I'm not going to name said so cousin, but still, you know what I'm saying? Okay. Like, it's like, come the hell on. Like,
yeah. That I understand where you're coming from now, but say the least, Tuesday, 8 a.m., Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, all podcasting platforms, We Like Sportz Podcast. Listen to us, tell your friends, share, leave us a review, leave us a subscription on YouTube as well. Check us out. Again, WeLikeSportsPC.com, We Like Sportz PC on Twitter. For Riggs, social media, Facebook, he's on there. Find him if you want. Twitter, he doesn't use it that often. He's going to end up probably getting in touch with Stephen R. at some point. And that's
Stephen R., he's upset at the moment over the loss of Jim Brown. He was telling me how he was at a game and he got on Jim Brown back, and Jim Brown ran about 45 yards. He'll explain that sometime this week on the social media or so. But yeah, he's trumped up about it. That's what he told me.
Understandable. So that's for Riggs. Stephen R., you're going to hear from him soon. Stay tuned to social media. At Ed in Columbus, Ed in Columbus. Make sure to check him out on the WeLikeSportsPC.com website. Great articles, all the editorials that you could think of. And for me, at Peyton Vince. We'll see you guys soon. Like I said, stay tuned to our social media. We will have an episode soon. Maybe just not this next Monday because it is Memorial Day after all. So happy Memorial Day. Be safe. Enjoy your holiday. Warmer weather's around the corner. Enjoy it. We'll see you guys soon.
Be safe, everybody. Thank you.